Hi, I'm Mary Beth. And one caveat, I cannot take credit for the audition process at Jellyvision. It was in place when I got there. I joined Jellyvision about 5.5 years ago when the company was under 50 employees and was really more a creative services agency. Since then, we've grown, and our product, Alex, which is a communication platform for employers that helps employees make good benefit decisions, wellness decisions, and financial wellness decisions. We've really grown into a SaaS company where Alex is our primary business, and we do services work now only for our Alex clients. But we have scaled tremendously in that transition from being a services company to a SaaS product company. So we are now over 300 employees. So all I can take credit for is scaling what was already an excellent process when I got to Jellyvision. Because talent has always been a very, very important part of Jellyvision's strategy. And the audition is a really important part of our process. So, thinking about more traditional recruiting, things that people tend to look at, years of experience, reputation of previous employers, and the similarity of the previous employer's work to what you're doing, schools attended, degrees obtained, GPAs. All of that is recruiting by proxy, right? It's looking at things that you hope are going to be predictive of somebody's performance on the job. When actually getting some work product or giving people a chance to demonstrate their skills is going to be much, much more predictive. And that's what the audition is in our process. You can call it a skills test. We have kind of a funky culture growing out of real kind of comedy background. Harry's, our founder's games company, Jackbox Games, did You Don't Know Jack. And there's still that idea of using humor to engage people in an interactive experience. So when I say audition, some people think I mean stand-up. And for the non-extroverted applicants, they're very relieved to find out usually it's just something we email out and ask you to email back in a couple of days with some work product relevant to the role that we're trying to hire for. We audition for every role at Jellyvision. So you may be familiar with skill tests in the roles of tech and sales. So coding tests aren't that unusual. Asking a salesperson to do a sales presentation isn't that unusual. I think what's unusual about what we do is we come up with a custom audition for every single role in the company. So a couple of comments on that, because I know a lot of folks here do a lot of tech recruiting. If you do a skills test, you really want to think about how are you keying that to the kind of people that you want to hire. So some people will add whiteboarding, for example, as a step in their developer evaluation. But you need to realize that whiteboarding is something that's generally much more comfortable for computer science degree holders, folks who have gone through that formal training, and much less comfortable for folks who are self-taught. So you really need to think, are you trying to hire folks with CS degrees, and why? And if you're not, if you're looking at self-taught people, do you have a part in your process that may be turning them off because it's not comfortable to them? And if you think about it, whiteboarding is doing something without being able to access resources online and doing it in a high-pressure situation in front of a room full of people you don't know, which is not the conditions under which people will actually do the job. So you're kind of testing people's skills in a way that they won't actually be performing on the job. So we tend to make our tech auditions something that we can email out and ask you to email back, say in 48 hours, and we say, this is open book. You can Google whatever you want. Please don't consult other people. We want your work to be your work, but everything else is on the table. Go ahead and do research to be able to give us a good answer. Or we'll do something where we'll we'll spin up a server for the audition, and we'll have people, part of the audition is getting in, doing a bunch of tasks, and then the hiring manager can watch as they do those tasks from the comfort of their own home in an environment that's comfortable for them, but we can watch what they would do in a real world situation. We find that's a much better fit for letting people to perform under the conditions that they'll actually perform at work. Now sales, on the other hand, having to stand up in front of a room full of people you don't know and pitch is actually quite like what sales is. So that can be a very good audition, having somebody, giving people a scenario, having them come in and need to pitch. I know there's a classic of like, okay, sell me this pen, right, in the moment stuff. Actually, one of the most predictive factors for whether or not people are going to be good at sales is the preparation that they put into their audition. So I wouldn't recommend an on the spot. The presentation is going to be on the spot enough. Give them something that they can research and prepare for you when they come in, because you will see the level of preparation that they do, and that's going to be a very telling factor in your audition. But moving beyond that into other roles in the company where you might not think it's intuitive to do a skills test or an audition. Considering admin roles, and I may be dating myself, but when I entered the work world for my first job as a receptionist, I was given an out-of-the-box test that tested my grammar and typing skills. We don't do that anymore. That's not what I'm talking about. This isn't generic, let me see what skills you have and maybe they apply to this job. We try to create an audition that is, hey, here's what the job is, let's see how you do it. So for an admin role, you're looking for a coordinator, they're going to be doing a lot of scheduling. Come up with a fake project and a team and the parameters of what needs to be scheduled and have lots of conflicts in it, and ask them to produce a schedule for you. And from great candidates, you won't just get back a schedule. You'll get back a schedule and a list of assumptions they had to make in creating that schedule and a list of backup plans if their assumptions weren't correct, right? So they've done the task, but they've also shown you who they are and how they think. So we try and create that for every role, even an admin role. Senior roles, I will admit, are the hardest to audition for. But we do auditions for senior roles also. Sometimes we'll use a case study and ask people to comment. Sometimes we'll come up with pretty high-level stuff like size this market, or here's a new product we want to launch. What would your pricing strategy be? So pretty high-level questions, but where you get to see people's thinking at a very, very high level. So how do we create auditions? I ask my hiring managers when we're going to hire for a new role to really think about the 3 to 5 essential characteristics that we need in this role. And then evaluate those for which are you going to be able to get good information in an interview, right? So things that are experience-based, where you're going to be able to talk in the interview, tell me about a time what were you responsible for, what went wrong, what did you do? The stuff where you're going to be able to get good information in the interview, that's great, leave it in the interview. The stuff that you can really only see to believe, for example, somebody detail-oriented. You can ask everybody in an interview, are you detail-oriented? And I guarantee you, you're never going to get any answer than, oh yes, absolutely, very, very. Nobody's ever going to be like, I'm kind of sloppy. Never going to happen, right? You can try and be more subtle in your questioning. You tell me about a mistake that you made to see, does it have to do with detail? But everybody's got an answer prepped for, tell me about a mistake that you made, right? But in an audition, there's no way around it. If somebody has to follow directions, deliver several different things, they're going to show you their detail orientation in the process of that interview. So what are the things that you're looking for in each role that you want somebody to show you rather than tell you? That should be the basis of the audition. Now look to the routine tasks of the role. When do those things come out in the job? And create the audition around those. Create a hypothetical scenario that encompasses the kinds of things you want them to show you. Try and make your hypos creative, both to make it fun. Jellyvision has a real spirit of fun. You can't tell from my presentation because I'm the least fun person at Jellyvision, I apologize. But Jellyvision has a real spirit of fun. And so we try and keep our hypos fun as well. But that's twofold. One, to make it amusing for the person doing it, but also to make it really, really clear you're not using your audition process to get free work out of candidates, right? You're not posing real business problems so you can get 50 people's take on them and then do something without hiring anyone. When you make it a crazy hypo, we're thinking of launching a jelly bean recommender tool, and we want you to do the marketing plan for it, right? Clearly not something we're going to do, clearly something fun, clearly just an opportunity to see how they think through a problem. Keep the time commitment reasonable for what you're asking them to do. And what I would consider reasonable, what we aim for, is 3 to 4 hours of work. And you might say, Mary Beth, that's crazy. That is not reasonable. Asking candidates to put an additional 3 to 4 hours into your process isn't possible. I'm telling you it is. We hired 130 people last year, and we had them all audition. Got to be honest, I think we had one person we didn't audition. That person is no longer with the company. So it's the exception that proves the rule, right? Keep the time commitment reasonable. But what I found, 3 to 4 hours is what we try and key it to. Most of the people, when they join Jellyvision, I ask them, tell me about the audition, how much time did you spend? They spent 15, 20, 30 hours of time on the audition because they care that much. So you want it to be something achievable, but you will definitely see the different levels of engagement in your candidates from how much time they put into it. Test it out on your current folks in the role. That's both to benchmark, right? If you've got somebody in that role that you love, or if you've got somebody doing something similar and you know that they are kind of your gold standard for what you want, have them test the audition so you can see how they interpreted your questions and what they delivered, and then that can kind of be your benchmark or your rubric for grading auditions as they come in. That also will help you flesh out, was your hypo ambiguous? Were your directions not clear? Was there a typo in there that really changed what you were trying to get at? Testing it internally before you launch it is really, really important. And insert it in the middle of your hiring process. So this is very search specific for us, but you want to make sure that the candidate has had time to talk to you, to get engaged with you, to have their questions answered before you ask this kind of work of them. But you also want to have it early enough in the process that you're not wasting everybody's time, because for us, the audition is really a determinative factor. If somebody bombs the audition, we cut it off. And so there's no use wasting their time with a bunch of interviews if the audition is really going to make the decision. There's also no use wasting all of your internal folks' time interviewing them if they haven't auditioned yet. So usually our audition comes either after the initial interview with my team, or we do an interview with my team and then an interview with the manager and then the audition. But in any case, the audition almost always comes before the final round interview, before we bring in a big group of people to meet with the candidate. And another thing that we consider is how discerning is your hiring manager? Because if you've got a hiring manager who isn't very discerning, who just loves everybody and passes everything along, it's probably not helpful to have them interview people before they do the audition. Let the audition do the weeding out work and then find out who your hiring manager likes. If you've got an incredibly discerning hiring manager who never likes anybody, probably makes sense to have them meet candidates and only ask candidates they like to put the work into the audition. So a lot of different factors there, but try and get it in the middle, find that balance between engaging the candidate before you ask them to do the work, and getting that determinative factor out of the way before you ask people to put a lot more time into the candidate. Additional benefits of the audition process. Vetting non-role specific skills. So you want your audition to be really keyed to the specific skills you want for that role, but you're going to see so many things. The ability to meet a deadline, right? If you've given people 48 hours, you wait and see who gets it in by the deadline, who gets it in at 49 hours but doesn't mention anything, hopes you won't notice, who reaches out because they need an extension because of this, that, and the other thing that they hadn't considered. Tells you a lot about what you're going to see when they're working for you and delivering work. Work ethic, again, how much time and research and energy and creativity do people put into it? Detail orientation, as I mentioned earlier, and also the understanding of your business or culture. One of the things that's really important to Jellyvision is our voice, and especially for customer-facing roles, we'll usually have a scenario that somebody's got to work through, and then the final step of the audition will be, okay, great, now send an email to the client explaining why we made the decision that we did or why you changed the schedule in that way, and we can see if they've gotten who we are and the voice that we use, and can they do a good job of it when they're talking to our clients or potential clients. Another great benefit of the audition process, since we don't audition everybody that we interview, it's a smaller group of people, my team can identity redact the auditions before we give them to the managers, and we try and have them come in groups. And then when you've got just a piece of work product with no name attached to it, you can't draw anything from that name in terms of race, gender, religion, and you also can't have confirmation bias where if the manager did an interview first and they really like a candidate, they may look more favorably, not be as critical of the audition that person did. So it really can make sure that you're removing any non-relevant factors that a name might put into the process, and you're also making sure that the work product is being evaluated as work product. And finally, and perhaps counterintuitively, can really increase engagement with your recruiting process. Because I know some of you are thinking, it's a war on talent, we've got to move quickly, there's no time to add more work and ask more of people. But I've got to tell you, we're too big. I no longer interview everybody who comes into the company, but I do meet everybody who joins the company shortly after they join to ask what they thought of our recruiting and onboarding process. And when I ask about the audition, the vast majority of the time I hear, I loved the audition. Why do they love the audition? For 3 reasons. One is, if you really tailored it to the job, you've asked people to do something they love to do. Hey, artist, create a piece of art, right? Hey, really detailed scheduler, take this really difficult schedule and make it work out, right? They love what they were asked to do, so it was fun for them. Secondly, it gives them insight into the role. If you're really keying it to the things that people do in the job, it will give them insight into the job, and it can help them evaluate if they're going to be a good fit, just as you're evaluating them. And finally, Jellyvision takes a really, really broad approach to recruiting. We tend not to look at your background. We hire for DNA. And the audition lets us vet that DNA. And I hear from people with non-traditional backgrounds, with resumes that don't look good, how grateful they are that they had an opportunity to show us their skill rather than trying to convince us in an interview that they could do something they've never technically done before in their career. So it lets you open up a bigger talent pool. It lets you look at people that the market isn't maybe looking at, and it gets you really, really engaged and grateful employees who are very thankful that you gave them an opportunity to demonstrate their skill rather than just try and convince you they could do the job. So here's how to reach me. I could go on about auditions forever because I really do think they are the key to Jellyvision's hiring. So if this is something that you want to try and you could use any advice or thinking through how to do an audition for a role, I'm really happy. Reach out. Would love to talk more about it. Thank you so much.